Welcome to Accelerate Your Wealth, a podcast by Rebecca Robertson, founder and director of Evolution Financial Planning. This series, we're focusing on female financial independence, looking towards a stronger financial future. Be sure to let us know your thoughts on the show, and please do connect with us on Facebook, LinkedIn or Instagram, or head over to www.rebeccarobertson.co.uk.
Hi and welcome to today's session, which is strategies to maintain your financial independence with myself, Rebecca Robertson, and I hope you're having a wonderful day. The sun is out today, I'm feeling cheery, so let's see if we can help you with your financial journey. Now, I'd just like to share a story of somebody that I spoke to this week, because it's a story of a slightly older lady who she booked a one-to-one session with me. And it's really bizarre because when I'm talking to somebody, I can literally tell them 20 million things that they should be doing and need to doing. And they say to me, have you got this note? So like, I've not been able to write this all down. And I say, it's fine, we'll send you a recording so you can listen back. And I said, oh, yes, has this been helpful for you? And he said, yes, I was just about to basically spend 25 grand. You've just saved me 25 grand. And it was around sort of a divorce settlement with her partner, and the partner left many years ago, and it became obvious to me that there's quite a few red flags that she's been manipulated, possibly feeling very victimized, so she doesn't realize it, that to sort of solve a problem and go 50-50 on that problem with this in this particular circumstances, which I won't get into personal circumstances, but it was really super interesting how having somebody take a step back and look at the bigger picture without the emotion can have such an impact on people's lives. And her situation from a financial independence perspective was she was still financially dependent on him. Even though he left 9 years ago, she was still financially dependent on him. They've been married for over 35 years. And this is one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about what I do, because I have these conversations with women all the time. And so it's really important for me to sort of pass this message on to others, because that I see it as my role in life, to pass this message back to others so that you can learn from some of those mistakes that I see, unfortunately, that are happening with other people, which, you know, is a real shame. So she's now in a situation where she's reliant on him paying the mortgage. She's reliant on him paying the bills. She's reliant on him solving a problem that he created, because she gave him the full financial control. She gave him the baton of, you look after all the finances. So it's a problem that's now come from his lack of financial education, quite frankly. And it's now meant that going through the divorce, even 9 years later, she's still financially reliant on him. And as an older lady who would normally be retiring, she's still likely to have to work into her 70s to financially support herself. So we were coming up with a plan as to how best to go about that, how best to make some financial decisions now that her future self will thank her for. Her future self will say, I'm really glad that I didn't give them that money and I held some of that money back. I'm really glad that I stood my ground and I said, this is what I need and this is what I want to happen. And one of the key messages for her is be really clear on what it is you want. Because if you can't be clear on what you want, you don't, the old saying, you know, if you don't ask, you don't get. Certainly in those circumstances is very much the case. But I think that's the case energetically in life in general. If you're not clear on what it is that you want, and I'm not talking from a manifesting abundance woo-woo kind of, I'm just talking about basic psychology, that if you're not clear on what it is you want to achieve, then you can't get there. So when it comes to being financially independent, what is important to you? What is it that you want? What is it you want to be in a situation of in a year or 2 or 3 years time? So for everybody, that's quite different. So for me, when I first started my business, I was made redundant. I started my business 10 years ago. I was made redundant when I was 14 weeks pregnant with she's now 14. Nearly 14 next month. And the recession hit, I couldn't get a job. Things were really difficult. I ended up signing on And eventually I got a job back in the industry, and I got my sort of career back on track after a few years. And I realized through that process that I wanted to go back to work. Before that, my whole like who I was as a person, like my badge of honor was this role that I had. I was a regional sales manager. I looked after a big team of financial advisors and mortgage brokers. And then I became just a mum. So for me, the financial independence was really crucial because it got completely taken away. I went from being a main wage earner between me and my husband. I did at one point more than him, to having to ask for money, have to say, can I have an allowance or have some? And he was amazing, I will say. Like, he never questioned what I spent the money on. He paid all the other bills. I still had a car. I still was able to go to jobs and take job interviews. But we made the decision that I would look after my daughter and he would go to work, because at that period of time I couldn't get a job. But when I did then start back at work, I was having to look at childcare. I was having to look at getting the nursery and covering the cost for that. Now, he was great, because if I was out at work and he could pick my daughter up from nursery, he'd get off the stop ahead, pick her up and then walk her home. So he's always been very supportive of the decisions that we've made as a couple. And I know that's not always easy for everybody. That meant there was times where I didn't have to work, but I wanted to. And then when I started my business, which felt like I just didn't want to work in this sort of awful corporate pushy environments anymore. I wanted to be able to look after my clients differently. It then meant that when I then started my business and things became much more stressful, you've got a lot more responsibility, a lot more hats to wear, lots to juggle, and you haven't got a boss telling you you've got to be at work at a certain time. So the dynamics of responsibility sways more towards the person that's got the flexibility than the person that's got a boss telling them they've got to do more hours and knuckle down, and if they want this promotion, you've got to do this. So it meant that something was always having to give when it came to what I was doing or what was going on with me. So therefore I'd maybe work less because I had less childcare, or I'd work less because there was more going on in other areas of my life. But I still dug my heels in, even when the business was not doing very well in the first couple of years. I really dug my heels in, and my family and my husband to say, like, just go and get an employed job. And I said, no, it's not going to work, because I need the flexibility and I want to be there for my kid at the time, now kids. I have 2 children now. And when I had my second child, I went through another probably about 8 months after I came back from maternity leave where it wasn't plain sailing for me. I see other people do it and it's absolutely amazing. They have babies and it's all good. But for me, I had a massive dip in my income. It's almost like everyone said, oh, she had a baby, like she's not around. And that wasn't the case at all. I was around, I was working. So I went through sort of 2 startup periods, and there are times in the pandemic when I was thinking, do I really want to be doing this? But again, I had to dig my heels in. There's times when it's been hard work running my business, but I've done it because I wanted financial independence and I wanted flexibility and I wanted to be there for my kids. And there's been times when my husband now earns actually more than me, but he's had the opportunity to do that whilst I've been the main carer of the children. And now it's in a situation, there have been periods where actually for a lot of it, I haven't actually financially had to work, but I've chosen to have these, difficult conversations with him. I've chosen to have ask for help to achieve an objective where sometimes they don't really understand why you're doing this event, or why you're working so hard, or why you're working the evenings, or why you're working weekends when you financially don't actually need to. So when it comes to strategies to maintain your financial independence, I think you've got to be really clear on what it is you want. And I knew that what I wanted was to have a job and the flexibility that meant that if anything was to happen between me and my partner, that I knew that I could stand on my own 2 feet and that I'd be okay, that I wouldn't have to be in a relationship that financially meant that I couldn't walk away if I wanted to. Because again, I've seen so many women in that situation. Equally, I like having my own money. We do have joint money. He has his own money, but I don't like going to him and saying, right, we need to book a holiday. How are we going to pay for that? I rather say, right, I'd love to go on holiday. Where do you fancy going? I can pay half of that, or I've got the money to pay all of that. I like the fact that, for example, I've just paid for my daughter at 13 to do her horse exams, BHS level 1, which costs about 300 quid, and also then a weekly £40 lesson. And we already have 2 horses, weekly lessons, shows, hiring lorries. We already have all of that, and her career will be horse led, I believe. So my way of being able to give back is by being able to financially support those things. And my little boy does football, and he does swimming lessons and all the rest of it. So we're in a good financial position that we can do that. And those things are really important to me, that I can then make those decisions. I'm not saying to my husband, I want to do this, what do you think? And then having to go to our joint money, him paying for it, which he would be more than happy with. There's no conflict or issue there. I just want the financial independence that I haven't even got to think about having to consult or consider or think about that. And that's a really strong value for me. It's driven a huge amount of my life decisions. And so that's the same question back to you, really. Where have you got to right now you're not happy with? Where do you want to be? What strategies have got you to where you are? And what values do you really strongly value to mean that you want to shift and go in a different direction? So that could be changing jobs. That could be taking some qualifications to get more of a better paid job. It could be training in an area that you really enjoy, and it means that you can then, maybe start your own business. Or it might be helping out some friends and having a couple of jobs on the side. Or I don't like the word side hustle or hustling, because I think it encourages us to become busy morons where we're stressed out, and we don't have to be earning well and be so busy and burnt out. We can be earning well and not hustling for it. And not to say we don't have to knuckle down sometimes, but it shouldn't be a constant stress mechanism where we're having to hustle the whole time. That's what hustling sounds like to me. So then when you've got those options, you've got more money coming in. So I talk about it in the make, manage and multiply phase. In the make phase, you've got to be making more money to manage it and multiply it in the first place. So if you're only working part-time because you're doing around the children, okay, great. How could you get maybe a few more hours? When do those hours increase? What other help could you get? What qualifications or training could you take? What other side jobs could you do? What conversations do you need to be having to move you towards having that financial independence? So when you've got some of that financial independence, and we start talking about, okay, you want to be managing it. So we're talking about budgeting, paying off debts, and it starts to then have a knock-on effect. You're able to do those things that much more quicker. So paying off debts where you've got high interest rates, not having the backup money. So you've got some backup money to fall back on, so you're not having to use credit cards in the future. Managing the money that you have got, making sure you're spending the money in line with your values. So I've talked about some of my values. I'm not so worried about cars and handbags and shoes. I spend an awful lot of money on the horses and experiences and some days out and things like that with my kids. So doing some basic money management. I know it sounds a bit obvious. Now with what's going to be happening possibly over the spring with gas prices, so gas and electrics increasing, getting the kids involved with turning stuff off and not having so much electrics on, whether you feel that it's a thing for you to be able to afford or not, you will be at the end of the day paying more money out in gas and electric for then subsequently you're not then able to actually channel that money to something else. And then once you start to build up some savings and basic background backup stuff, it then means you're in a situation where if you wanted to walk out of a relationship or you needed to move out, which I don't recommend if you're in a married relationship, to walk out of the family home that can have legal potential consequences to that. But if you need to go and, you know, have a couple of nights away and book a hotel, or you want to book a girls holiday, or you've got choices, right? You've got options. So the strategies really after that, you can start investing, you can start multiplying, you could open up a second business, you could start experiencing more, possibly paying for a coach to come, you know, to help you increase your skill set. You might have a personal coach or a counsellor to help you overcome previous traumas, which makes you feel more confident, which makes you go for bigger contracts or bigger jobs, or to market yourself more confidently. And then once you start to have the surplus income, then you can start thinking about, okay, how do I need to invest this? How can I multiply this money? And then that increases your financial independence. But it really does come back to the revenue. So it's important that as women, that I feel that we maintain our financial independence, especially after having children, and that we have our partners on board with that. And quite often, I believe that when I've been in the right place and I've communicated more effectively, I've got the better outcome. It's when we're in a situation where we're feeling bitter, sad, emotionally upset somehow, and we're bringing that to the conversation, the outcomes are often blame comes into it, fear comes into it, etc. And if you are in a difficult relationship, we have had previous podcasts, for example, two particular ones that come to mind. So do check out the other podcasts, and you'll see that there's some great resources around that in the other podcasts. So when it comes to true financial independence or financial freedom in general, what most people, so not just female independence, but most people are looking to retire early, and they're looking to maybe sell their business or step back from the business, or they always want to do what they're doing, but they want the option to not have to work as much, or just change up how they do things. Or if you're employed, you might say, okay, well, I can only do this for another 5 or 10 years. I don't want to be doing this until I'm 70 or until I'm 65. It's all about reducing your debts in line with that, but at the same time investing, because of the way compound interest works. And I will mention, because obviously we've got Russia, we've had a pandemic, we've had high inflation as I'm recording this, that yes, those things affect the markets, but that's still not a reason not to invest. Some of those actually are a reason to invest, and that's a separate podcast in itself. So I hope you've enjoyed this session today. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. I'd love to hear back from you. Do subscribe. Obviously, if I've got a webinar or something you want to go and check out, do go check out my website. If you're looking for regulated financial advice, then that is on a separate website, which is evolutionfinancialplanning.co.uk. Do go and check out my 2 books, which are Amazon bestsellers. I have a journal diary planner. It's called a Wealth Accelerator Planner, which is great for business owners and employed people. It gets you budgeting, saving and investing. And then there's also my 10 Ways to Accelerate Your Wealth book, also available on Amazon. So I'd love you to go and check those out. Love to hear from you, and take care. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode of Accelerate Your Wealth. For further help or to connect with Rebecca directly, please head over to the website www.rebeccarobertson.co.uk, where you can find further information on our planner, book, and how to further maximise your wealth. For any regulated advice, please do head over to www.evolutionfinancialplanning.co.uk.